Shortage on employees. Hear me out. I might be stretching, but possibly one of the reasons why you're having such a shortage on finding people is because people can't get to work anymore. When I was in my 20s, I used to live in this rundown apartment in the middle of Buckhead. And I used to keep a job, baby. Marshall's, Terra Movie Theater, CVS, Sandwich Shop, all because I could. Even when my car broke down, I was at least able to walk to these jobs or catch the bus because the bus stop was right in front of my house. That same apartment complex, it was $585 back then. Today, it's $1,200. Which means if I were 20 today, I wouldn't be able to afford to live there. I would have to live further out. And the further you live away from the city, the worse public transportation is. And the way that cars are set up now, even people who make $60,000 a year can't get a car. You can't even afford a used car anymore because there's a shortage of cars. And Uber has even gone up in price. I wouldn't ride the bus for 2 hours to make $8 an hour.
You might see this title and think that the answer is very obvious, but it's worse than you think it is, I promise. On average, commuters are spending $8,500 a year on commute expenses, in addition to $1,700 on insurance for whatever transportation they take, and then an additional 240 hours of your time is spent commuting.
So I was at a work lunch today, and the people at the table next to us were having what I found to be a very disturbing conversation about the housing crisis. So we're at a restaurant like downtown, a nice restaurant, and it's a group of older Caucasian men having a conversation about essentially the fact that no one is entitled to live in the city. Like, they weren't denying the housing crisis. They were saying, yeah, like, prices are completely unreasonable. I totally get it. You can't afford to live here on a regular salary, blah, blah, blah. But then they said, at what point do people become entitled to live in a major city? Like, they were talking about how their dad moved them from where they were because they couldn't afford it and they had to go somewhere else, and people should just live out in the suburbs or whatever. And I mean, first of all, like, the suburbs are not really affordable either. So if we're talking about affordability, you have to go way out of the city. And then there are two issues. The first one being that, like, okay, so then people with their big city salaries go out into the suburbs or wherever far enough that you think these people need to be flung off to, and then raise those housing prices. And then where do the people who live there go? Because at a certain point, this magical solution that you seem to think exists of just shoving people farther and farther out and making poor centers ends. At a certain point, there's nowhere else to go. And then two, here you are in the middle of the day at this lovely restaurant being served by these wonderful people who are well trained at what they do, and you want that. You want to come to your nice restaurant and have someone serve you. You want to go to the coffee shop in the morning and have someone serve you. You want people around who can do things for you. And the thing is that those people need to live somewhere. But us were having what I found to be a very disturbing conversation about the housing crisis.
Everything in that video was spot on. And I want to add to a bit more. When people say that you're entitled for wanting to live in a city, they're just so out of touch with reality, because what do they expect us to do? They expect us to go to the suburbs where it's more affordable. And do you know what? I did that. In 2021, I moved up to the suburbs to get an affordable 2-bedroom apartment for $2,000. That was 2 years ago. Do you want to know how much the same apartment is now being rented for? $2,800. An hour outside of the city. Because you know what happens when everybody moves out of the city because it's no longer affordable to live in the city? It raises the prices of wherever they're moving to. I am an hour outside of Vancouver and I'm paying $3,300 a month for a 3-bedroom townhouse, which is absurd. It doesn't matter which affordable place I go to because it's just going to become unaffordable in a couple of years when everybody else does the same thing. That is the problem with this housing crisis, is eventually there's going to be nowhere affordable to go. And realistically, there's nowhere affordable in BC unless maybe you're going to go up north where there are no jobs. I actually grew up on the east coast of Canada, which is always affordable, and that was always my backup plan, that if I ever couldn't afford to live out west where I'm currently living, I always knew I could go back home just outside of Halifax and it would be affordable there. But guess what? No, because all of the people who couldn't afford to live on the west coast were like, hey, let's go to the east coast of Canada. It's really affordable. And now it's the same issue out there. There's literally nowhere affordable. And regardless of all that, I don't think it's entitled to want to live in a city. I don't think it's entitled to not want to have to spend hours each day commuting to your job. Honestly, if there was some magical, small, affordable town that I could have my current job at, I probably consider doing it. I would probably consider moving there. However, my job really doesn't exist outside of major cities, which is part of the problem. And I actually looked on Indeed, LinkedIn, like all these job searching websites the other day, just to see like what is out there for my job in other more affordable areas of the country. And I say affordable loosely because there's nowhere that's really affordable. And I literally could not find my job outside of cities like Vancouver, Toronto. I actually couldn't even find anything in Calgary, which was surprising to me. So people say move somewhere cheaper. Like, okay, where am I gonna go find a job in this magical cheaper city? I'm not. Until something is done about this housing crisis, it's just gonna keep getting worse and worse. And you should not have to be making 6 figures just to afford a roof over your head.
$21 an hour working 40 hours a week.
This woman says she gets paid $21 an hour and she still cannot afford to live in Ontario. That's pretty sad. And that's pretty much anywhere you go in GTA right now. You have to live literally somewhere in some farmland 2.5 hours from Toronto to maybe get a basement apartment to live. Recently I saw a post that said Canada is the second best country to live in. Yeah, tell this girl that. We need to make Canada affordable again. And now winter is coming, and oof, if more people get kicked out of their houses and shelters are gonna be full, it's gonna be a fucking nightmare. The government won't do shit. I guess one solution is to learn French, and they're a little cheaper right now, so I'm coming to rent your apartment.
Coming to bed, honey?
Yes, dear.
I'm addicted to the thrill.
I'm ready.
It's a dangerous love affair. Can't be scared when it goes down. Got a problem? Tell me now. Only thing that's on my mind is who's gonna run this town tonight.
Where do you live?
I live in Maple Ridge, BC.
Maple Ridge? And why do you live there?
I live there because I can't afford a house in Vancouver, even though I work here.
So you do work here. Where do you work?
I work in downtown core mostly.
Yeah.
It's very much inflated, and with current interest rates, I don't see how anybody can even afford to get into the housing market, even though I have a good job, a well-paying job, still can't afford it. So if I didn't own now, I wouldn't be buying a house here, that's for sure.
This is 150% right. If everybody who could not afford comfortably to live comfortably in Toronto moved, there would be nobody working at Starbucks, nobody at Tim Hortons, grocery stores would be closed, gas stations would be closed, dispensaries would be closed, most restaurants would be closed, all kitchen staff, all waiters, all bartenders, everybody who works retail, and a plethora of other jobs, not to mention a lot of office jobs and a lot of things that are high-paying jobs. They just wouldn't live here. They wouldn't be here. This is totally right, and I have no idea why there are so many people saying, well, if you can't afford Toronto, don't live in Toronto. Nobody can afford Toronto. Like 5% of Toronto can afford Toronto. What are you talking about?
I wake up at 4:30 every other week to commute from Philly down to DC for work. It sounds crazy, but honestly, I'm so used to it now. All I need is just warmth and a cozy pillow, and I'm knocked out. But yeah, it takes about 2 hours, and then I take a Lyft or an Uber to my job location because I'm just too tired to take the metro. And then I'm at work before 8:30.
American dream. Best country in the world.
If you ever want to know what it's like living in the city of Chicago, but you work in the suburbs and have to commute there each day, for reference, it is 5:43. I left work at 4 p.m. today. It took me an hour and 43 minutes to drive home from work. Got a shout out to the traffic and the dusting of snow we got.
Welcome to my new life of commuting an hour to work every day because apparently I hate myself. Just kidding. In reality, I got a new job that paid me a lot more than my old job, so obviously I took it. But the major downside is that it is an hour commute one way. And the kicker is my shifts usually start at either 6:30 or 7, so I will no longer be sleeping. And this isn't always the case for the field that I'm in, because where I worked before, sometimes our shifts were 8 or 8:30 or even 9, so I'm just so lucky. Also, since living in Pennsylvania, I have developed this new fear since I drive in the dark in the morning that a deer is just gonna run out and hit me, and it's terrifying. But yeah, anyway, solid hour commute each way, and then I get home and I'm greeted by my 2 beautiful cats, and immediately change into something comfy. Taking off your scrubs at the end of the day is literally amazing. I don't know if you work in healthcare, but something about taking your scrubs off, and it's not even like they're uncomfortable. You just like don't want to wear them anymore. Then I become a couch potato because I don't want to do anything after work, and then watch Netflix until it's time to go to bed around 9 p.m. This is when I contemplate all my life's choices and pray for a remote job in the future.
Princess, look out the window. And welcome to Genovia.
Just like iced coffee in the morning, wakes me up the way I want it. Such a rush, I'm tripping and I'm falling.
I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies.